Air Force Base to a little place called Mena, Arkansas, where Bill Clinton protected it. And the same thing is happening now with the guns going down to Mexico by the BATF. The BATF is selling it to their partners down behind who took over the drug cartels. They kicked out the Medellin cartel and installed the Cali cartel. So we've got the intelligence agencies like the CIA and the Mossad bringing the cocaine into this country. The CIA's flying it into this country. They're not even smuggling it. They're putting it on the air base and bringing it into the Air Force bases.
Oh, yeah. They have to be because there's too much. So it has to be coordinated.
And now it has a little side benefit. You know, as Ayn Rand said, the government has no control over honest citizens, so they have to make criminals out of us, and that's what the drug laws are about. Not only did they rip off and steal a multi-million-dollar crop, they increased the value of it hundreds of times by making it illegal. So they can, now we've got the government agencies bringing it in, selling it, installing the drug dealers in the ghettos among the Hispanics, and selling it to your kids so your kids can provide fodder for the for-profit prison systems. Did I get this right, Jay?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And they don't want you to smoke pot. They want you to snort cocaine. They don't want you to smoke pot. They want you to do methadone. This is what they really want. And
how about the millions of people that are on pain medication, sleeping pills? I mean, I thought my grandmother was just old and feeble until I took one of her sleeping pills.
Exactly. The prescription drugs, the whole thing is all run by the same people, and there's absolutely no way in the world that these things are not completely contrived. That's what's going on here. Is they have chosen drugs that they want us to take, and they've chosen drugs they don't want us to take, and that's what the whole message is. They don't want you to smoke pot. The reason they don't want you to smoke pot is because they did studies, the CIA did studies in the 50s in which they tried to find out what drugs make people more ready to be mind controlled, and what drugs actually stop you from being mind controlled. And they loved all these other drugs. They loved heroin, they loved methadone, they loved cocaine, they loved downers, uppers, they loved everything. But the one drug that they found where the mind control, the MK Ultra programming, actually did not work so well with marijuana.
That's what Kathy O'Brien told me as we smoked a joint. And I've been smoking most of my life, and I can't be hypnotized, Jay. Yeah, I can hypnotize you. I can hypnotize you. Can give me a subject. I can hypnotize them in 10 minutes. But
no, I can't be hypnotized either. And here's at one time, you know, here's the thing. They keep telling us that marijuana makes you stupid, right? Well, and actually there are some people that probably that does happen. I've seen it. I'm not sure why, but in some people it does have a bad reaction. I know that's true. But I was at a party once, a long time ago. And we were talking about UFOs. There were about 10 people, and everybody was smoking pot. And these are fairly big people, famous people. And everybody's talking about UFOs, and I said, well, I don't believe that UFOs are aliens. I don't believe any of that. I don't see why I should. Fully expecting the entire party to come down on me because it was such a renegade position at the time. And it ended up that every single person in the party thought the same thing. And so there was a great deal of clarity in this room mentally that I was shocked by. And these people could not be fooled. And they were all potheads.
I said we stopped the war in the 60s, you know, and we were right in the 60s. We had the music in the 60s. People knew, but the whole movement got hijacked. That's what they do. They take over every movement. The Tea Party's taking over. I mean, you got the Sarah Palin is a darling. She wants to go bomb Iran.
Yep. Oh yeah, the Tea Party was actually an anti-interventionist Ron Paul movement, and now it's been hijacked by the Michelle Bachmann, Sarah Palin, Rick Perry wing, and who are actually just the same old, same old. Hey, nothing different about it. They may say something different, but when they get in there, we're going to be in 100 countries just like we are now. We're going to have millions of troops all over the world just like we are now, not minding our own business, sticking our nose in other people's business, trying to control everybody. And it's time to bring the troops home. It's time to get out of the wars. It's time. And dang it, folks, if Ron Paul doesn't do it, we're going to have to do it.
You know, over 8 years ago, before my accident, and maybe this is the result of my accident, I proposed a solution to everything I've been reporting on for 20 years. It was called Liberty Villages. And what I saw in my vision was low-cost housing, teepees, yurts, cabins, blow-up houses, whatever. You know, you can blow up a house and spray it with water and it turns into concrete now. And generating our own energy in small villages, I call them villages. So you got people working that tend the gardens, you grow organic food, and you generate your own energy from everything God gave us, the sun and the wind and the magnets. And then you don't need the government, you don't need the middlemen, you don't need the churches for nothing. You're back in touch with nature. It's a foundation. The self-sufficient family farm is the basis of every civilization. And why is the ninth plank on the Communist Manifesto? Corporate farms, regional planning, and now we got Obama even moving to that. He says the rural communities are you know, got tremendous economic potential, so the federal government's got to move in.
Yeah, well, you know, Che Guevara was quoted once saying that it was very sad because the family farmer supported us in our evolution and fed us when we were fighting the rebellion. And so it's very sad that the first thing that we have to do in our so-called revolution is get rid of the family farmer, go to make it ready for community farming, as he called it.
It was the family farms in Vietnam that helped kick our ass out, and we should have been kicked out. We had no business bombing the farmers. That's the first people we bombed, the farmers.
Oh, absolutely. Nobody realizes the Viet Cong weren't North Vietnamese that were somehow stuck in South Vietnam like everyone thinks. Viet Cong were farmers who had been kicked off their land by us and by the people that we supported in Saigon. And that's who the Viet Cong were. They were just indigenous rebels. They weren't communists. We made them communists by fighting them and bombing their farms. And, you know,
maybe you'd be the person to ask this. You know, we're 9/11 was our false flag. That's the most the biggest false flag operation in history. But who won the Cold War?
The New World Order. There was no Cold War. There was no Cold War. The Cold War was a complete fraud. The same people that were in control of the Soviet Union were in control of the United States, were in control of China. There was no Cold War. It was a fraud. It was a gigantic research project with two branches doing the same kind of research. It was basically space, weapons, outer space, NASA, and the control of the weaponization of space. That was what the Cold War was about, to terrify us, to make sure that they could completely control our movements, and to have the threat of nuclear war over our heads, which of course never happened, right? And that's what's going on.
I think they're going to sacrifice 6 million Jews in Israel, blame it on the Iranians to take us into a nuclear war. I mean, we got all these weapons sitting around up there in Albuquerque, up in the mountain there, and the Manzanos, and we got all these nuclear weapons. Russia's got all these nuclear weapons. What the hell are they for? Who made all the money off of making those, and what are they doing just sitting around?
Well, that's the thing. That's what Ron Paul's trying to stop. It's out of control. The military-industrial complex is out of control. It's making useless weapon systems that will never be used. It's making things that will never happen. It's encouraging wars just to experiment with these things. The whole thing isn't being driven by any other interests but these corporate interests. it's crony capitalism, as he says, and every single president that's ever tried to curtail the military-industrial complex has ended up horizontal. And so we need to, realize that this is a serious thing. That Ron Paul needs our help. If you don't agree with him on a lot of stuff, that's fine. But on curtailing the military-industrial establishment, we have to do that. We have to come to grips with this is why we're in debt. This is why we're going broke. This is why we're going down. And we have to bring our troops home.
I just put this in from J.B. Campbell. He says, the U.S. Army is now the Red Army. The U.S. Army and the Red Army were military partners from 1941 to 1945, worked closely for another 3 years to slaughter millions of helpless Germans and Jew-eyed Europeans until the lucrative Cold War was started. Suddenly, the partners became enemies. In a few decades, the Soviet had served its purpose in the war and was dissolved. America then became the communist monster with no counterbalance. And I said what Solzhenitsyn tried to communicate with us from the distant past could be summed up in these words of his. It would have been difficult to design a path out of communism worse than the one that has been followed. I said we're at that stage right now. We have to design a path out of and around the communist-style tyranny that even the common man can see forming before his eyes, a full-blown police state. The United States has more people in prison than any other country in the world, and the drug business fuels the prison industries. And that'll be up on my website shortly, folks. But
that's pretty close to being true, as far as I can tell. Yeah, that's what's going on. And Ayn Rand once said, you can ignore reality, but you cannot ignore the consequences of reality. And we're about to find out what those consequences are, and we're not going to like it. And we have been set up since the late 80s, when the so-called Soviet Union fell, which I don't believe it ever rose, and I don't believe it ever fell. I believe the whole thing was just a big puppet state. And in the time since Perestroika, we have been invaded by the Russian mob. Our intelligence agencies have all been compromised. We've sold off all of our top technology to China, our chief enemy on earth. And we owe them, they own our country. And I hate to tell you guys this, but there was a white paper written up 2 years ago by the Chinese military and presented to the Chinese Politburo, in which they said that the Native Americans were Asian descent. They come over the Bering Strait, the old theory goes, and therefore white Europeans stole America from Asians. In other words, this white paper was trying to create a reason. And what would that reason be? The reason would be to invade us. In that time, excuse me, China has purchased all of the ports in Long Beach,
both sides of the Panama Canal,
Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, and they own the Panama Canal. Somebody tell me that they're not preparing an invasion, please.
And now they've got the economic zones coming in. And this, in the first Homeland Security meeting, they said in case of a single outbreak of smallpox, a major atomic attack, earthquake on the New Madrid fault line, we'll need 400,000 well-armed, well-trained, organized, disciplined troops to control the American people, because some of them just won't follow orders. Oh, Colonel, are you talking about the National Guard? No, they're going to be busy in Iraq or Afghanistan or somewhere. No, we need a cheap source of well-armed, well-trained, organized, disciplined troops. And would that be the UN Rapid Strike Force manned by Chinese? Is that why they're teaching Chinese to speak English?
Well, it may be. It's also what these mystery cities that are in China. In northern China, they have these cities. You can type them in on Google.
Yes, sir.
And see them. And what those are, I think, is that they think that there's going to be still a retaliation attack by still loyal Americans in the military, and I pray there are some still loyal Americans in the upper echelons of the U.S. military. And I think that they got these cities, and they're going to, before China does their invasion, they're going to move most of the people out of Beijing and Shanghai and move them up into these empty cities, so that when we blast off our few remaining missiles, hopefully, they will hit nothing but empty cities. That's the plan.
Right, we wouldn't be targeting them right now. And
there's no reason.
What do you see? What role do you see Israel playing? I mean, we've got the UN vote coming up for the Palestinians. You know, to the whole problem in Israel is the elite are hiding behind the Jewish people.
Yeah.
They forced them down there. They forced them into the Palestinians. All that would have to happen is for Palestinians and Jews to be treated equally, the Palestinian Jews and Christians, just like they're supposed to be here. I mean, I don't care what religion you are here. You can go stick your nose in the sand. I'll even try to keep Saint Bernard off of you. You know.
Right.
You know.
Well, you know, Israel's an unnatural country. You know, countries are started by people who move there, move onto the land slowly, or they've lived there a long time, and then they know their neighbors. They've known their neighbors for a long time, and then eventually they form a country, and neighbors form countries, and this is how the evolution of these things happen. And you know, there's disputes and everything. But Israel was mandated by the UN, and so it was just a country completely created in an unnatural way. And
I call it a safe house for international criminals.
Well, it is. I mean, and the thing is that it looks like they're going to abandon Israel. And so, if it is a safe house for this mafia, which I think is a really good point, then I think we have to ask ourselves, well, why would this mafia abandon Israel now, which I think they actually are? And the answer is because they don't need it anymore. They don't have any. They have no allegiance to anyone.
I have suggested that they will blow up. They will set off an atomic bomb in Jerusalem to kill 6 million. 6 million. We got 6 million Jews in that area. And if they kill them and we go into the nuclear war with Iran and probably China, then they've accomplished and they've killed off that they've lowered the world's population to the 5 million they've written in stone.
I think you have a real good point, actually. And there's another interesting thing about this, which is I have an article on my website about it. There was a movie that came out in 2005 called Kingdom of Heaven, which was about the time that Saladin conquered Jerusalem in the 1300s. And it's a very good movie, actually, one of the better films that Hollywood's produced. Interestingly, in the movie, there's a scene where the hero, Orlando Bloom, is talking to his friar about Jerusalem. And you can go check this out or read my article. I have the picture. And right on Orlando Bloom's head is a very clearly etched in makeup the numbers 2012. And there's no doubt about it. Now, this is a $150 million film. Mistakes like this just do not get made. And so I wondered. And then I found out later that the movie was financed by Saudi Arabia. And we know Saudis are right in with all of this. And so I'm thinking that they were trying to tell that this movie was made to set us up for this idea that Jerusalem's always falling, it's always being attacked, and the director or somebody, I guess the director, knew about all the real machinations of this thing, and he had his makeup artist put the numbers on the guy's head so that we would know. And very interesting.
Now, let's go back to earlier you made a statement about some kind of forces. I think you even have a name for this. Somebody that some beings that exist in the background.
Yeah, where I get my information from is what I did was I do a lot of research, obviously, and I had started realizing about 15 years ago that pretty much any books that I read or anything that I read that was after the court of Constantine in 350 AD was completely controlled by either church or state, and it had been censored and rewritten, and I mean everything. And so I decided that the efficacy of that information was no longer valid. So I went back to sources that had not been spun by church or state. And I ended up, with a lot of interesting texts. And one of the most interesting texts that I ended up with was the Nag Hammadi texts, which were discovered in Egypt in 1945 in clay jars in a cave. And so I knew these were not, the church had not got their fingers on it, no kings had got their monkey prints on it. And so I decided that I would read these texts because they had not been messed with by anyone. They're 2,000 years old. And what these texts tell us is that there is a group here on this planet that the Nag Hammadis call the Archons. And the Archons seek to enslave the human race. And the people that told these stories, what's interesting about this, sounds almost like a science fiction idea, 2,000-year-old science fiction story. But what's really interesting about this is that every time I would investigate a group that was preaching these ideas of this group called the Archons that invaded the human race and was taking us over, every time one of these groups would raise their head and start saying this, the authorities, whoever they were, didn't matter, Catholic, Jewish, Islamic, came down and killed them all, every time. To the point where the religion that was preaching this philosophy, Gnosticism, was wiped off the face of the earth about 1,500 years ago. One of the biggest religions on earth is now gone, completely gone. And what does this religion believe? This religion believes that that Jehovah is a slave master, and he's not a God. He's a fake God. He's acting like he's God. And they believe in a God. They believe in what they call a one true God. And they believe that these Archons can infect people. They can get inside people and change them. And Archons are attracted to negative energies like fear and violence and rape and so this idea, I think, has a lot of credibility. And
it sounds like you're just describing the people in charge of all the studios.
Exactly, they are. And I used to be in Hollywood. I used to be a Hollywood screenwriter, and I can tell you there's some seriously creepy stuff going on in Hollywood, and I was so glad to leave. I was a naive kid from the Midwest, and I spent 7 years there, and I hightailed it out of there as fast as I could when I started finding out what they were really doing in Hollywood. And but it's not just Hollywood, it's also Washington, it's also the United Nations, it's not just the head of the United States, it's the heads of almost every country.
I referred to what's happening now with the wars and the war in Vietnam and all that, is they're putting it on entertainment, they're filming it, they're getting off on it.
They do get off on it. They like it. They like what they like is war, killing, violence, but what they really like is sex. Not sex for love, but just sex. Just straight ahead, grotesque sex between every kind of beings. They think that's really funny and entertaining and ha 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 and all that. And what they really hate, though, most of all, is they hate love. And they hate the love between a man and a woman more than anything else. It drives them crazy. Why would they hate the love between a man and a woman? Why would they want to do everything they can to destroy the union of man and woman? Because it weakens us. When men and women are not together and not living together and working together and loving each other, we are weakened as a race. And when you end up doing an analysis of everything that's going on, you can only end up in one place. There is some force that wants us on our knees, weak, cannot fight, can't think for ourselves, can't even think. And that's where we are right now. It's a really scary, dangerous situation.
We're being drugged down, we're being fed poisons, we're being sprayed. Chemtrails are, this is This is literally poisoning the soil and the water you're drinking. I've just got a film up on my website right down there. If you scroll down on the Blog TV Free American site, you can see the test showing the concentration of aluminum way over what's good for you. So they are literally poisoning us right now, attacking our crops, genetically modified crops. Rats won't eat it, but it's okay for you and your kids to get it.
Yeah, and not to mention 3 nuclear meltdowns going on right now. It's wave after wave of radiation pouring over the United States right now as we're talking.
It's I've suggested that we may have been in what the Bible referred to as Armageddon for the last 100 years. The press just didn't tell us about it.
Yeah, I like to say Armageddon out of here.
170 million people killed by their own governments. Now, we're not even counting the wars.
No, I know. I'm surprised it's not higher, actually.
Now,
yeah, it's bad, man.
The only answer that I could come up with is restoring the self-sufficient family farms. If we can put these little communities together, people working together to grow their own food, to generate their own energy, and to educate people around them, we can take back the family farms. You know, I said that's the problem we got right now.
The homeschooling, family farms, community, that's the way to go. That's how we have to go. It's the only way we can go. Everyone should drop everything and do that right now. I really mean that.
I proposed it 8 years ago, and then they tried to kill me. Right after that came out in my centerfold of my magazine, distributed nationally, then suddenly I was in an arranged accident.
They like to arrange these accidents. They're everywhere, going on all the time. Yeah.
Well, folks, you can get all of this by going to freeamerican.com. Now, you've got books up. We got links right there to your site.
Yeah, go to my site, JayWeidner2.wmv, or get my videos at sacredmysteries.com. Become self-sufficient, learn to think for yourself, and listen to this show every day.
I appreciate that, and we'll have this link up to the article, because the article I just wrote just goes right along with what you're saying, even to some of the language, the culling and all that.
Fantastic.
So it's and we got an answer here. We're putting together an event here. Hopefully we can attract about 1,000 people. We're going to get. We have the sheriffs speaking in the southern counties that are facing the illegal, and I think they're running the illegals in on us just like they ran the Jews in on the Christians in Russia from the beyond the pale.
Yeah, I never thought of that. Yeah,
60,000 Americans have been killed since 9/11 by illegal aliens. 40% of your prison population is illegal aliens.
Send them back. Why put them in prison?
Why take up the room in the prison? Go back to country, you know?
Send them back. I don't want throwing money on them.
Yeah.
Or execute them. I mean, I don't care. If they kill somebody, they should be executed.
That's right. Eye for an eye. All right, sir. Jay, I think we're just. Let me just check here, and okay, where are we at here, guys? See here. Okay, we're out of time here. Jay, thanks for being with me.
Talk to you.
Bye bye. Okay, and this one.
Call recording has been completed.